Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. What a week it has been for Cleveland sports fans. I know Browns fans, it's time to talk about Sunday, that big win against the Steelers, both literally and figuratively. Don't worry, Logan Purcell and I are going to get into all of that. We're going to break it down for you. Also, big news in the NBA surrounding James Harden. He's now a member of the Brooklyn Nets. Logan and I will break that down as well. We'll also get you some Premier League highlights and stats in here as well. That'll be our first topic of the day. But first, let's get into our intro. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darius Sethna of NordoniaHills.news, and the Cleveland Sports Show starts right now. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. That's right, I'm your host Darius Sethna, back at you for another awesome week of Cleveland sports. Ladies and gentlemen, today is January 15th, 2021. First and foremost, would like to say happy birthday to Drew Brees. He is celebrating his 42nd birthday today in the midst of his playoff push to get a Super Bowl for New Orleans. So just wanted to send a shout out to Drew Brees. Happy birthday to him. Let's get into our sports fact of the day for this week. Today is, as I mentioned, January 15th, and on this day, way back in 1939, we're going to go to Wrigley Field, not in Chicago, but in Los Angeles. Yes, Wrigley Field from Los Angeles, California, hosted the first ever NFL All-Star game. It was between the defending champion at the time, the New York Giants, and the All-America All-Stars. That's what the other All-Star team was known as. The Giants defeat the All-American All-Stars by a final score of 13-10. The game was played, as I mentioned, Sunday, January 15th, 1939, in LA at the Wrigley Field, in front of about 15 to 20,000 fans. Bad weather led to poor attendance, and as I mentioned, Giants defeat the All-Stars 13-10. The players on the All-Star squad were selected by fan balloting as well. And that's just an interesting fact there for you. So we didn't have two All-Star teams. We had one All-Star team and the defending champions. It's so interesting to always see how sports were organized, especially at that time, way back when. But here's something I learned as well. There are two Wrigley Fields. Well, we all know the Wrigley Field, famous home of the Chicago Cubs, but there was, at one time, a Wrigley Field in Los Angeles, California, as well. Always love learning about that new stuff. But ladies and gentlemen, let's get you into some Premier League action because these standings don't get any tighter. Right now, Manchester United, in the Premier League, are in first place. They have 11 wins, 3 draws, and 3 losses for a total of 36 points. Liverpool come in at second place, 3 points behind Man United for 33 points, thanks to 9 wins, 6 draws, and 2 losses. Manchester City come in at third place with a record of 9 wins, 5 draws, 2 losses for a combined 32 points. And then fourth and fifth place are also tied for 32 points. In fourth place, respectively, it's Leicester City with 10 wins, 2 draws, 5 losses. Coming in with that exact same record at fifth place is Everton. They have 32 points on the board as well. 2 points behind Everton for sixth place is Tottenham Hotspur. They have 8 wins, 6 draws, and 3 losses on the season for 30 points. And then to round out our top 7 this week in the Premier League, Southampton is in 7th place with 8 wins, 5 draws, and 4 losses for a combined total of 29 points. Overall stats in the Premier League so far. Mohamed Salah of Liverpool leads the league in scoring with 13 goals on the season so far. Son Heung-min of Tottenham Hotspur with 12 goals on the season. And then Bruno Fernandes, Dominique Calvert-Lewin, Harry Kane, and Jamie Vardy all tie for third place, each of those players respectively with 11 goals. Harry Kane, still the only player in the Premier League with double-digit assists to his name. 11 assists on the year right now for Harry Kane. Kevin De Bruyne of Manchester City looks like he's going to catch up to Harry Kane rather quickly. 9 assists on the year so far for De Bruyne. Bruno Fernandes and Jack Grealish tie for third place, each of those players with 7 assists. Let's get you into the specific matchups for our Premier League week this week. Match day 19 of 38. We have a slate of games for you this weekend, so if you're a Browns fan and a soccer fan, it's your weekend this weekend, so I hope you enjoy it. We're going to start with some Premier League matches. Tomorrow at 7:30 a.m., Wolves will be taking on West Brom. West Ham will be taking on Burnley tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Leeds United taking on Brighton. Fulham going up against Chelsea tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. 3 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, we have Leicester City taking on Southampton. And on Sunday, we have 3 games for you. 3 games on Sunday. Sheffield United taking on Tottenham Hotspur Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Liverpool going up against Manchester United at 11:30 a.m. And then to round out our day before the Browns game, kickoff will be before the Browns game. Manchester City will be taking on Crystal Palace at 2:15 p.m. Eastern Time. We also have one game Monday on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Monday, the 18th of January at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Arsenal will be going up against Newcastle. So that is your Premier League news, ladies and gentlemen. But guess what? We haven't even scratched the surface of what we're going to be talking about in the Cleveland Sports Show. James Harden to the Nets. And guess what? The Cavs got affected in this too. So you're going to want to stick around and hear about that. Also going to be talking about Kyrie Irving and what's been going on with him, the latest news in all this Nets drama. We'll also be talking about the Cavs because obviously this is the Cleveland Sports Show. And then we're going to dive deep into the Browns versus Steelers matchup. What went wrong? You're going to get Logan and I's reactions, and we're going to see where the Steelers possibly go from here. We're then going to preview the Browns taking on the Chiefs this upcoming Sunday from Arrowhead Field in Kansas City, Missouri. You're not going to want to miss this episode. It is just a historical week and weekend for the Cleveland Browns. I'm so excited to be a part of history. And Logan Purcell is going to join us for the Cleveland Sports Show right now. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. It is great. It is a pleasure to have Logan Purcell, an Ordonia freshman, joining me once again this week. First and foremost, Logan, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome back.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
Yeah, and it's definitely a great week for me after seeing that Browns game this past weekend. We're going to get into all that Browns talk a little later, Logan, but right now I want to talk about the NBA for a little bit. Blockbuster trade going down that actually impacted the Cavs as well. Logan, James Harden going to the Brooklyn Nets. It's official. A day after complaining about how the Houston Rockets just weren't good enough, it's obvious that Harden wanted out of Houston, and he got his wish. The superstar is now going to join Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn. Let's break down what happened. Now, specifically, Logan, Nets obviously got James Harden. The Houston Rockets, in return, get Pacers guard Victor Oladipo. Dante Exum of the Cleveland Cavaliers is obviously gone from Cleveland now. He'll be going to Houston. Rodion Kurucs of the Brooklyn Nets also going to the Rockets. Houston will also receive 3 Brooklyn first-rounders, a Milwaukee first-round pick, and then 4 Brooklyn first-round swaps. The Indiana Pacers will receive Brooklyn Nets, he was a young superstar, well, not young superstar, but up-and-coming star is the better way to say it, Karis LeVert, and they'll also get a second-rounder. And now the Cleveland Cavaliers, our Cavs will get Jared Allen and Taurian Prince. So, Logan, first, overall reactions on the trade. We'll get into the Cavs aspect here shortly, but in terms of winners and losers, Logan, who were the winners and losers of this Harden trade? Because, yeah, the Nets got a superstar in James Harden, who this year is averaging 25 points and shooting about 44% from the field. But now the Nets championship window is obviously closed because you've gotten rid of all that young talent. So What are your thoughts on this whole thing, Logan?
Well, at first, when we first talked about this a few weeks ago, I was very, hesitant. You can't trade all these young assets, for someone that's, isn't going to be as valuable for as long as they might be. But, that perspective kind of changed a little bit when Dinwiddie went down.
Yeah.
Because they lost a lot of depth with that. So, I think to a degree, that kind of changed. But from respect to the Nets, I feel as though that it would have made more sense had they been able to try to keep either Levert or Allen because, at the end of the day, how I look at it is there's one basketball.
Right.
And you're talking about three elite scorers, all guys that can get it done off the dribble, all guys that can get it done by themselves. Kevin Durant is a very unselfish superstar, but Kyrie Irving was, he's proven to be a fairly selfish superstar himself, and obviously James Harden, melodrama and all this other stuff. It's in my opinion, it's going to be a mess in Brooklyn. But at the end of the day, you're adding an elite superstar scorer, so there's only so much negative you can take away from that.
Do you think now, Logan, it's pretty much? I think the Brooklyn Nets. There's no excuse for them not to make the finals. Is there also pressure on them? Now, should we expect them to win the whole thing? Because we look at the Clippers, the Lakers, we look at that competition out there in Los Angeles. I think the Nets can, compete with those teams. So should we expect the Nets to win it all this year, Logan?
Well, I've heard a lot of people be saying those kinds of things, right? And, of course, I'm not a Lakers fan, I'm not a Nets fan, but to me, it's not always about, it is about winning, of course it is, right? But to me, it's about getting out of the East. To me, you don't have to win it, but you have to compete. It's runner-up or bust to me.
Yeah.
Because, if you don't make the finals, then I think that it was a complete bust. Because don't get me wrong, the East is, great, but I don't know if you can really name, another big three in the NBA right now. Not two elite players, and then there's this third guy that's okay.
Yeah.
Three
I know what you mean.
elite basketball players. There's not another team like that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that, to me, if they don't make it out of the East, then this was a major bust of a trade. But at the end of the day, I would never, kind of like, betting against Tom Brady in football, I would never bet against the two, in my opinion, the two best players in the NBA right now, Anthony Davis and LeBron James.
Yeah, for sure, and especially what we saw them do last year in the bubble in Orlando. Now, Logan, we're going to stick to this James Harden trade because the Cavs, of all teams, were in it. And the Cavs, we were talking about Jared Allen. They'll receive Jared Allen, and they'll also get another young star in Taurian Prince. Now, Jared Allen this season averaged about 11 points per game, shot about 68% from the field, averaged about 2 blocks per game, and then on the other side, Taurian Prince, not the best scorer. This is kind of a guy who you can throw in as an extra body. And he's a good offensive player as well. I like his overall game. He has a nice shooting stroke. Shot about 41% from the field so far this season. He's averaging about 8 points per game, 3 rebounds per game. Logan, especially the way we've seen the Cavs these last 2 games, it's been a struggle for them to get guys healthy. What are your thoughts on now Taurian Prince and Jared Allen coming to the Cavs? Is it more of a benefit, or do you see more drawbacks?
Well, to me, I see a lot of benefit. I've heard a lot of people, I've talked about this with a few different people to this point, people saying, Jared Allen, now you've got a team full of centers, right? But in my belief, I think that this works to the Cavs' benefit in a lot of ways because now you have the ability to trade a guy like Andre Drummond. Not that I would,
Okay.
He has had an amazing season, but you're talking about a guy in Andre Drummond who is more than likely leaving Cleveland this upcoming season as a free agent, unrestricted, of course.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, it's one of those situations, kind of like the Rockets did with Harden. If they didn't trade him because they, wanted to trade him, they traded him because he was either going to go out on the trade or they're going to not get anything for him.
Right.
So they assume, let me load up on picks for him. So I think the Cavs have to trade Drummond, and I think they could probably get a lot of value for him with the way he's played in this year, averaging quite more than a double-double at 18 and 15 on the season. So I think that this is a perfect situation, but to me, the Cavs have a big decision that will make or break their upcoming, I would say, the next 5 or 6 years, because I don't think the Cavs can let a 22-year-old Jared Allen, who has, averaged a double-double over his career,
Yeah, and to me, Logan, too, I mean, you were almost, I think, kind of assuming, like, okay, Jared Allen's going to stay in Cleveland. Are you also nervous that he's not going to be staying in Cleveland? Because we were talking about Drummond leaving. I mean, it's very possible that Jared Allen might not be happy in Cleveland once the season comes to an end. So are you nervous about that as well?
Well, no, because at the end of the day, you're talking about a 22-year-old guy who's, based on history in the NBA, if you think about it, right, most of the time the guys who are leaving their teams quite often are the 30-year-old guys that are, at the peak of their prime, leaving a little bit, getting out of there just to head out and get rings. Think about like Kevin Durant.
Right.
He wasn't, 24 years old when he left Oklahoma City. He was, 28, 29, 30. He was around there.
Yeah.
LeBron, when he left Cleveland the first time, he was, 27, 28 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's up there. Jared Allen's 22 years old. So I think that you're talking about, a young guy that if you give him the kind of role that he, has earned, and I believe that he will get in Cleveland, then I think that he's going to be convinced enough to stay if you give him the, ability to be that guy.
Yeah. Also, Logan, your thoughts on Taurian Prince. We just mentioned Jared Allen. Great analysis on him, by the way. Let's look at the other guy in this trade, Taurian Prince. What are your thoughts on him coming to Cleveland? He's obviously not an offensive, firepower threat, but, he's kind of a streaky shooter, and I like his overall game. So how do you think he can benefit the Cavs?
Yeah, I think Taurian Prince is exactly what you said. I think he's, I wouldn't say he's more than a mere shooter for the team. I wouldn't, call him a scorer per se. He's not going to score the basketball he's not a 3-level scorer or anything like that. He's not going to come out and average 15 points a game, but he's, in my opinion, a pure body just to come out and play basketball for this team. It adds a little bit of depth. I think it's definitely an upgrade over a guy like Dante Exum. So, I mean,
yeah, for sure.
In my opinion, if I was, giving the Cavs a grade on this entire trade, I'm probably giving them a B+, A- because, this was a great trade, giving up a couple of pretty useless picks because those teams that they traded the picks for aren't going to be good teams, or aren't going to be bad teams. So those will be solid picks. The Milwaukee in 4 years, Giannis, if he stays at the same level, will, in my opinion, remain in Milwaukee.
Right.
And I think it was a A- trade for the Cavs. They got a lot of value for not all that much, to be honest with you. So I love the trade, but Taurian Prince is going to add a lot of spacing to the floor as well for the Cavs. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I'm certainly also just excited to see overall how they both, integrate with the Cavs. Taurian Prince and Jared Allen were two key cornerstones of the Nets in terms of their youth. And let's see what they're going to bring now to this Cavs youth movement that is really, to me, looks like it has a lot of promise. But, Logan, let's talk the other team, one last team who was involved in this trade, the Indiana Pacers. Now, out of all of this, they had to give up Victor Oladipo, but they also got Caris LeVert in a second-rounder as well. So you have Caris LeVert, you have Malcolm Brogdon, Miles Turner is still there. I mean, I was kind of jealous the Pacers got Caris LeVert because I kind of wanted the Cavs to get Caris LeVert. How do you see this whole situation now working out in Indiana, Logan?
Yeah, well, I love the trade for Indiana. If anything, I like it a little bit more than even the Cavs trade because despite the fact that the Cavs gave up a whole lot of nothing, to be honest with you,
right?
The Pacers gave up Victor Oladipo, and you think, okay, well, they gave up Victor Oladipo and they got another guy that's pretty much the same level back, but that's not exactly the case because Victor Oladipo said that he was committed to Indiana, but I mean, I don't think anybody that really was reading the comments or staying updated on that situation really believed that. So I think that the Pacers won that trade in a big way, getting another really young, great scorer, in my opinion. I mean, I could see Caris LeVert being, the next version of a Russell Westbrook kind of player, if you will. I mean,
I feel like he'd be a better
player.
I feel like he just wanted to say, Logan, I feel like you just compared Caris to Russell Westbrook. I think Caris is a much better shooter than Westbrook, though. And I think overall better ball handler as well.
Scoring-wise, from a scoring aspect, he's not the exact same passer. If anything, I mean, in the series against Toronto in the bubble last year, he averaged like 21, 8, and 6.
Yeah.
Which, for a guy who is like low 20s at age, that is a very, very impressive stat line for a guy like that. And I am very confident that this guy is going to be averaging a triple-double within the next 4 or 5 years. And I think he's one of those guys that, in a couple of years, you think about, when people talk about who's going to be the next greats in the league, and there's Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, guys like that. I think that Caris LeVert is one of those underrated
Yeah, I'll be so excited to see what the Pacers are going to do. I'm going to be very excited to see how that backcourt tandem of Karis LeVert and Malcolm Brogdon's going to work as well. And I was a little nervous when the Nets had to give up Karis LeVert in order to get James Harden, but we'll see how all of this works out. Last thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the Cavs more specifically, Logan, is Kyrie Irving, who's obviously a former Cleveland Cavalier. And I don't know if you've heard, I think most NBA fans, we've heard about all the news that's been going on with Kyrie Irving. It's been official now. Kyrie's been fined $50,000 and is going to forfeit pretty much over about $800,000 after attending an indoor party. It was a birthday party, family celebration. He was not wearing a mask. Now, latest news on Kyrie is that he's expected to play against the Orlando Magic after an NBA-ordered quarantine, which he obviously will be done serving soon. So that's why the Nets are expecting him to play against Orlando. Even amidst all these trade talks, Logan, we've been hearing, these guys have to be able to work together. You were mentioning that as well at the beginning of our segment. And what do you make out of this, out of all this Kyrie noise? How does this hurt the Nets, and are you surprised by what Kyrie has done? I just wanted to get your take on this entire situation.
Yeah, if I had to pick a player in the NBA that is my favorite player, I think it's Kyrie. I gotta say Kyrie Irving. He's just a magician with the basketball. He has the ball on a string at all times. He's an elite shooter and scorer. He can get wherever he wants in the court. But I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to just putting his head down and playing basketball, he's a child at times, and it just seems like he doesn't. I've heard Stephen A. Smith said it. He said that he might as well retire.
Yeah, I heard that as well.
He doesn't appear to want to play basketball, and I would have to agree with him. It just seems like he doesn't have that motivation that he used to have, and I don't know why that is, but I have to say I am very disappointed with the recent acts against the violations and things like that of Kyrie Irving. But I think at the end of the day, he came to Brooklyn with Kevin Durant to play with Kevin Durant and to compete for a ring. So I think that if he understands that that this is putting that on the line, putting that at risk, I think he's gonna step up his act and go back to playing like the elite scoring Kyrie Irving that we all know and love.
Yeah, I certainly hope you're right, Logan. Especially, I think the way this James Harden trade can work for the Nets is, James Harden and Kevin Durant have known each other since their days in Oklahoma City, so they obviously have friendship still. And, I think that friendship is going to help Kyrie elevate his game because Durant and Irving are also very good friends. And, DeAndre Jordan's still there, and he's a great chemistry guy, especially in the locker room. So, I hope you're right, Logan, and I hope this Nets chemistry can get back together. Steve Nash, it looks like everything's under control with him. I'm not totally sure. I mean, he's very, very he's confining a lot of what is going on. So it's just overall very interesting to see what the Nets are going to do. Their next game will be tomorrow, a home game against the Orlando Magic. Logan, final NBA talk here. Let's get into the Cavs, who just finished their road trip and are on the verge of concluding their 3-game homestand. So the Cavs' final game against the Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis Antetokounmpo didn't play after getting hurt the night before to the Utah Jazz. And this past Saturday, January 9th, Cavs were in Milwaukee taking on the Bucks. Cavs were also without Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, their backcourt of the future, really. And Andre Drummond really had to carry the Cavs this past Saturday. 26 points in 41 minutes to go along with 24 rebounds as well. Amazing stat. Damian Dotson also contributed with 21 points as well. 17 points in 40 minutes for Larry Nance Jr. But for the Milwaukee Bucks, it was the Chris Middleton show. He led all scorers in this game with 27 points in 35 minutes to also go along with 6 assists and 5 rebounds. Logan, I wanted to get your thoughts on how the Cavs competed in that game against Milwaukee. They only lost by 10. The final score would eventually be 100-90. So, Logan, I know the Bucks didn't have Giannis, but were you pleased with how the Cavs competed, without their starting backcourt? And what were your overall thoughts on this game?
Well, with a 10-point loss,
Yeah.
What can you say?
Right.
But, a guy like Damian Dotson, who's been really quiet as of recent, he had a great game as well, 21 points, and like you said, he had a really standout performance. But, Chris Middleton, to me, was not only a monster, but another name that you didn't happen to mention on the Bucks was Bobby Portis.
Yeah.
Who ended the game with 17 and 11. And to me, that was even bigger because, the Bucks needed Middleton, but they also needed that second guy. And I think Bobby Portis acted just as that. And, the struggle of guarding him or defending Bobby Portis and even on the inside, with Drummond and guys like that, I'm a little bit concerned about that. So, and the amount that they played, you see 40 minutes across the board, that's a little bit insane to me.
Yeah, and Logan, also, do you think that, did this game give you confidence that the Bucks that Giannis has a strong supporting cast around him?
Well, partially, yeah, but, anybody can get hot at any game.
That's
so
true, yeah.
For me, it's a matter of, I got to wait a little bit. Again, we're, 12 games into the year for some teams and 11, 13 for others,
Right.
It's a little bit all over the board. But I think you got to wait a little bit, see what happens, and if they can, to me, it doesn't really matter the kind of supporting cast that he has if he doesn't compete for a title. Because, you could have, like we were talking about with the Nets earlier, you could have, 3 or 4 A-plus all-star players. If you don't win a title or compete for a title, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So, to me, it's more of a matter of whether they can perform when it matters, which Chris Middleton has proven to be able to. But, guys like Brook Lopez and, Pat Connaughton, some of the Dante DiVincenzo, guys that have been there for a few years, haven't really performed that well in the playoffs. So I'm more interested to see what the new guys, Bobby Portis, Drew Holiday, guys like that will be able to do this upcoming season.
Yeah, I'm also looking forward to see how the Milwaukee Bucks can now compete in the Eastern Conference, especially with Philly and how they're rising. Sixers are looking really good, Logan, this year, and obviously now with the Nets acquiring James Harden. So it'll be super, super interesting to see how all of that plays out. And the rest of the games for the Cavs this week, Logan, they had a 10-point loss back home this past Monday, the 11th, against Memphis. The Cavs have signed Yogi Ferrell to a contract just with all the injuries that they are dealing with. And Yogi Ferrell had a solid performance, 9 points, 17 minutes, 2 rebounds, and 1 assist. I think, it seemed like he hadn't lost his step. This is a Yogi Ferrell who had experience in Sacramento with the Kings as well. And then, so Cavs lose that game by 10, Logan, 101-91, and then they just get blown out of Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse the next night. Tuesday, January 12th, Utah Jazz were in Cleveland. Jordan Clarkson made his return, and it was just it was bruising from the start. The Cavs, it was a 4-point game at the end of the first quarter, but then the Utah Jazz just showed their championship superiority. Championship caliber superiority, I should say. 27-18 in the second quarter was the score. Then the Jazz poured on 38 points alone in the third quarter. Logan, this Jazz team to me is just, they're not going to be the Western Conference champions in my eyes. But when I look at this team, and even last year, this is a team to me who's just very solid all around. You have Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, you have the shooter in Bojan Bogdanovic, Royce O'Neal, and Derek Favors are strong, aggressive forwards that have girth. It just seems to me, Logan, like this Utah team has everything, a little bit of everything. What are your thoughts on the Jazz right now?
Yeah, I think the Jazz have the possibility to compete, not for, like you said, a title or anything like that of, even close but I think that, the kind of team that they've built there is a very interestingly built team. They've got a lot of shooters built around a very athletic and versatile scoring guard in Donovan Mitchell and a defensive stalwart in Rudy Gobert. And I just think that, they have a lot of potential, to make a lot of noise this season. And another guy that, I was very interested in seeing, he doesn't play a whole lot because he is a really underrated rookie in my opinion, but Udoka Azubuike out of Kansas. I think that was a very interesting pickup, but I think that if he, is able to maybe get a little bit of playing time. I remember watching this guy in college, and he was a very effective player, so I'd like
I think they're a little more well-rounded than Milwaukee, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think they have more veterans that can shoot the basketball, but I think that would be definitely a matchup I'd like to see. Is Utah and Milwaukee? Those are two teams that I think are just neck and neck in the race.
Yeah.
Because you say that they're more well-rounded, but at the same time, I would never even in my right mind compare Donovan Mitchell to Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah.
It's kind of
right.
you win some, you lose some. So I think that's a team that could definitely compete. Maybe get close to making it out of the West, but I think at the end of it, it probably lose the Lakers anyways.
Right, and also, Logan, let's look at the other side of things. Cleveland Cavaliers. I can't even blame them for this 30-point loss. I was watching this game against the Jazz with my mom the other night on Tuesday, and it's like the Cavs just barely have anyone playing. I mean, it's like the great European plague back in the medieval ages. It's like you get what you get. And this is just, it's honestly kind of sad for me. And, the guys with all these injuries, Colin Sexton, I wasn't expecting him to be out for this long. Neither Darius Garland. Kevin Porter Jr. out with personal issues. Matthew Dellavedova has been in concussion protocol, it seems like forever now, Logan. Also, Dylan Windler hurt his wrist. Kevin Love, I have been saying this for the last 3 weeks. It's time for a trade. He needs to go to the Clippers, and we need to get Marcus Morris, but that's just my opinion. And Andre Drummond, is probable for tonight's game. He didn't play against the Jazz this past Tuesday. I mean, I don't know about you, Logan, but at the end of the day, I can't blame JB Bickerstaff and the Cavs for losing. I mean, that's just honestly, I don't like to use this word a lot, just unfair for them. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, at the end, you're right. It is unfair, but that's also the league because, you got to, part of building a team is not only getting the best possible scores, getting a pass or getting a rebound or getting a defensive guy. They have a lot of those things. You think of a scorer. You've got Colin Sexton. He's averaging just over 25 points a game.
Yeah.
You've got your shooters and a guy like Darius Garland. You've got 4 or 5 guys on Cleveland shooting over 40% from three-point range. Colin Sexton shooting over 50%. You've got your defensive guys, Andre Drummond, Larry Nance, Isaac Okoro, et cetera.
Right.
And, but one thing that is super underrated whenever you think of, the people that have built great teams in the NBA is durability.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, LeBron James, one of the things that makes him great, in my opinion, it's not only the fact that he's, averaged a triple-double or this and that, he's won this many rings, he beat the Warriors, whatnot. This man has played so many games and has maintained his durability and has stayed at the same level for 17 years.
I mean, it's all that money he spends on all the hyperventilating, and we've seen some workout footage. It's just incredible what he goes through, Logan, but it's just really
amazing.
amazing.
And his durability is just otherworldly. So, to me, that's one of the most underrated things, but the fact that, guys like Colin Sexton and Darius Garland are out is, kind of a testament to their youth. I think as you get older or, as you, believe you're going to be beginning to compete, and, that's just a complete mindset thing. You think of a guy like Kevin Durant. This is a guy that just loves playing basketball, so he's going to get out there and play whenever he can.
Right.
I don't know if I can say the same about Sexton and Garland. I haven't seen that from them yet. They both play at a relatively, B plus A minus level. Both of Garland with 17 and 6 on the year.
Right.
Sexton with a career high 25 a game, and I think that there's a lot of room to grow. But I think durability is one of those things that will definitely sideline the Cavs if they don't start figuring it out.
Yeah, this is just, it's honestly kind of depressing to see what JB Bickerstaff doesn't have a lot to work with. But I will tell you this, Logan, on a more positive side of things, to me, Larry Nance Jr. has been the player to watch for the Cavs thus far. I think he's their most improved player on the team so far this year. And I really love what he's bringing to the table. His three-point shooting game has just been improving just enormously. He's looked great out there. What are your thoughts on Larry Nance Jr. overall? I know we talked about him a little bit last week as well, but how are you surprised with how consistent he's been from three-point range?
Yeah. I mean, when you think of Larry Nance, you think of a guy that's going to rim run and be able to get on the inside and make plays in there. But I have been very impressed with his ability to shoot the basketball this year. I mean, he is up around 48% from the field and 42% from downtown, and that's
Yeah.
On average. So that, to me, is a really great improvement. And another thing that is, underrated about Larry Nance is, his passing ability. I mean, he's up around, 4 assists per game, and that's second on the Cavs right now. So to me, I mean, he has made a huge leap, even if it's not in the numbers, it doesn't show, points per game wise. He's
right.
not up around 20 still, or now. He's still around that 10, 11 around there. He's still around 6 boards, but his numbers, his averages, his consistency, his
right.
effectiveness,
yeah.
his usage has all risen, simultaneously, and I think that is a huge deal for him, and a lot of credit has to go to him, especially defensively. With an average of 2.4 assists per game, or steals. Excuse me, but that's a really great improvement. I've got a lot of confidence in him now. I really didn't see him as being a player that's going to be a factor in Cleveland for very long, but I mean, if he continues to improve, that could change.
Yeah, certainly can change, and I think it's changing a little bit, right now. It seems like Larry Nance Jr., one of the vocal leaders on this Cavs team. As I mentioned, he's had a terrific season so far. Hopefully he can keep it up. Ladies and gentlemen, overall schedule for the Cavs, we'll get that for you right now. Knicks will be in Cleveland at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse for a matchup with the Cavs tonight at 7:30 p.m. RJ Barrett and the crew coming off a loss to the Nets this past Wednesday at Madison Square Garden. Looking to both teams are 5-7 actually, so we'll see which team can improve their record a little bit. After this game in Cleveland, Cavs will head to Washington D.C. in our nation's capital for 2 games against the Washington Wizards at the Capital One Arena. Both games are at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Sunday the 17th, Cavs will be taking on the Wizards at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you're a big Cleveland sports fan, you're probably going to have to be switching between Cavs and Wizards, as well as the Browns game, as they'll be going up against the Chiefs. And then Monday, on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Cavaliers will be taking on the Wizards again from Capital One Arena. Same tip-off time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. After that game against the Wizards, Cavs will return home to Cleveland for two matchups actually, with the Brooklyn Nets. We'll see if Kyrie will play in Cleveland. Kyrie, this is interesting, Logan. Kyrie has not played a game in Cleveland since his Boston Celtics debut. That was October 17th, 2017. I was a freshman in high school. So, I mean, I think that's kind of interesting. Interesting fact there for you. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is our NBA news. That it concludes, and now it's the moment that we've all been waiting for. Logan, it's time to talk about our Cleveland Browns. And I don't know if you've seen, but here in the Nordonia area, Macedonia, along Route 82, near the Dunkin' Donuts, by that plaza that's near South Bedford Road, there's actually like a Browns fan stand. They have shirts, they have everything Cleveland Browns related. I mean, it just seems that Northeast Ohio is in the mood. They are ready for another Cleveland Browns weekend. I don't think anyone's ever talked about the Browns in mid-January in the NFL playoffs. This is their first playoff victory since 1994, Logan, against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think 3 letters to sum up this game, for me, Logan, at least: OMG. I mean, this game had Browns all over it from the start to the end. Steelers had a little bit of a run in that third quarter, Logan, but I mean, 28-0 after the first quarter. 28-0. I remember, Logan, you were saying last week you were predicting the Browns were going to score 28 points. I think you predicted a 28-24 scoreline in favor of the Browns. You were right on the Browns scoring 28 points, but not just in the first quarter. I mean, this was an unbelievable game. Logan, first and foremost, I want to get your reaction to this Browns victory on the road, nonetheless, in Pittsburgh at Heinz Field. What were you thinking as this game was going on? How do you just think about this? What are your thoughts, Logan?
Well, anytime the Browns have won, I've always, talked about the negatives. I've always, talked about how, maybe the Browns are, not going to perform this. They did this wrong. They didn't do this,
right,
and that kind of stuff. But, here's my thought. The second that game ended, I said the Chiefs might have themselves a game next week.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was talking to my family about this last night. I was like, let me tell you something right now, all
right.
to get back out there. It's not that
right.
same. It's not the same atmosphere. But the fact that they came out and put 28 points on the board in that first quarter, I think it lit a spark under Baker Mayfield and the rest of that group. And I think that this is a team that is hungry for some playoffs. And I think that the Chiefs are going to have themselves a competition this week.
And Baker Mayfield threw for 21 for 34, Logan, threw for 263 yards, 3 touchdown passes. Kareem Hunt with 2 touchdowns. Jarvis Landry, Nick Chubb, Austin Hooper, each with a touchdown. I mean, the Browns just poured it on from the very start. But the Steelers they were just awful. Ben Roethlisberger, first snap, and 2 Pittsburgh veterans. You had Pouncey and you had Roethlisberger on that snap. At first play of the game, they gave up a touchdown, and it just went downhill from there. I actually my grandparents live in the Pittsburgh area, and I was calling my grandfather every time the Steelers made a mistake. After every quarter, I was calling him, and at the end of the night, he told me, "Yes, you guys were just the better team." And the Browns certainly proved that. Now, we talked about, you were mentioning, Logan, how great this Browns team was, especially without Kevin Stefanski. But was this game more of fantastic Browns, or were the Steelers just horrendous?
Well, I think that this can go both ways. In the first half, the first quarter, I should say. Partly the first half, but mostly the first quarter. It was bad Steelers.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the plays, the first play, for instance, the Browns don't have a 7-point lead if that play doesn't happen. In my opinion, I think the Steelers do exactly what they did in the entire second half and just drive the football down the field.
Right.
But, the next possession, he throws a pick right to MJ Stewart, I believe.
Roethlisberger, yeah.
Yeah, and, if you really look at that play, don't get me wrong, the Browns were getting a tremendous pressure, that one of the best D-lines in the NFL, in my opinion. But, they, on that particular play, if you will, they didn't exactly get a lot of pressure. It was just a very arid pass. To me, it was high and wide of Benny Snell, who was supposed to be receiving the football. But
yeah,
I think it was the entire first quarter was good Browns, but from then on it was bad Browns and good Steelers. But I think that the first quarter energized them enough to give them the lead and hold it. But I give a lot of credit to the Browns for holding the lead. But after the majority of that first quarter was just pathetic Steelers to me.
And it's interesting, Logan, because the Browns only outscored the Steelers in one of the quarters, and that was that 28-0 first quarter. In the rest of the quarters, Pittsburgh outscored the Browns. 10-7 was the second quarter score, 13-0 third quarter score in favor of Pittsburgh, and then Steelers also outscored the Browns 14-13 in the fourth quarter, but that first quarter was just all a little too late for Pittsburgh to mount any kind of comeback whatsoever. And to me, Logan, the Steelers have a very, very important decision to make for their future. I've been hearing a lot of talk on ESPN this week, is it time for the Steelers to move on from Ben Roethlisberger? Because you have this wide receiving talent. You have guys like Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, Ebron, Claypool. You have a running back, or you have a great player in James Conner as well. So, Logan, is it time for the Steelers to officially move on from Ben Roethlisberger? I know we were talking about this last week as well, but I was not expecting to have Roethlisberger having such a bad performance as he did Sunday. So I think that raised my eyebrows a little more, and it really made me think about something like that, because the Steelers that's a big decision for their franchise. Do you think that they should keep Roethlisberger for a few more seasons, or is it time to move forward?
Well, with regret I say this, but I think it's about time to move forward. You're talking about a veteran who is going to be a Hall of Famer. He's on that brink to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Roethlisberger's a great player. Always competed in my eyes. He's made the playoffs forever. Think of the AFC North. You think of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
But I think it's about time to move on. And if it were me, if I'm the Steelers, I would make a big move in the first round of the draft this year, and I would try to get Mac Jones out of Bama. I think that this guy would fit in with that offense perfectly. And I just think that if they had to make a move, I think that would be the one to make. But I think it's time to move on from Roethlisberger.
Yeah, and I'm really going to be interested to see what the Steelers do this offseason, what their pick is in the NFL draft, and we don't know. I mean, it's very plausible that Ben Roethlisberger could be in a Steelers uniform next season, throwing passes. So anything is possible with this situation in Pittsburgh. I'm excited to see where they go from here. But Steelers are out, Logan. It's time to focus back on the Browns. They have another big matchup this weekend against the Kansas City Chiefs. Kickoff at 3:05 p.m. on CBS from Arrowhead Stadium in Cincinnati. Kansas City, Missouri. Patrick Mahomes, Logan, is undeniably a star in this league. Former MVP, defending Super Bowl champion. He's young and he's already accomplished so much. And we've seen Baker Mayfield end the Browns' drought. Their first playoff victory since 1994, Logan. So when I look at this matchup this Sunday, I have a question to ask you. Who has more pressure in this game to you, Logan? Is it Baker Mayfield or Patrick Mahomes?
Well, that's you could go either way. If you want to call Baker Mayfield out, you could say, hey, you've played well all year. You played the Pittsburgh Steelers, you played, well, but you weren't insane. You weren't, throwing 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. 263 and 3 touchdowns. Don't get me wrong, it's a great game, but
right.
You weren't crazy, right? But if you want to put the pressure on Patrick Mahomes, you're talking about a Browns team that has been doubted. They're 10-point favorites in this conference championship game.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, I would prefer to put the pressure on Patrick Mahomes. Despite him being an MVP, despite him being, a Super Bowl champion in his second season starting, I think that there's more pressure on him because, you're talking about a Browns team, again, 10-point deficit for the Chiefs off the bat in betting and favoriting and things like that. But this is a Browns team that has been doubted all year long. So the pressure's on Patrick Mahomes. But if the Browns can find a way to maintain scoring in this shootout of a game that it's going to be, then I think they can make something happen.
And you were just talking about the Browns maintaining that scoring. Logan, dive a little deeper for me as what specifically the Browns have to do to pull out this win on the road. What tactics are they going to have to do? Kevin Stefanski is obviously going to be back. Denzel Ward, Nordonia favorite, also will be back, along with Kevin Johnson. Offensive line coach Bill Callahan will return as well. So, more specifically, Logan, dive a little deeper for me as to what the Browns have to do to beat Kansas City this Sunday.
Yeah, well, the Kansas City Chiefs only had 2 losses on the year. They're 14-2 during the regular season, and the second loss that they had was one where Mahomes didn't play, Kyrie still didn't play. Basically they were resting because they had the number 1 seed racked up. But you think, okay, well, who else could they possibly have lost to? And believe it or not, it was the Las Vegas Raiders in Week 5, and they lost to the Raiders at a 40-32 clip.
Yeah.
And if you look at the numbers from that game, the yards are very similar, 490 to 413 in favor of the Raiders. The drives are similar, but the one big difference that I see is the rushing yards. In 35 attempts for the Josh Jacobs-led rushing attack of the Raiders, they had 144 yards.
Yeah.
So, to me, if the Browns can find a way to exploit the poor rushing defense of the Kansas City Chiefs, then I think that you're going to be able to, keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands. Because I look at this kind of like, a lot of people analyze the Buckeyes versus Bama game this national championship season.
Yeah.
It was bend, don't break.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, you're talking about probably the best quarterback in the NFL right now. Not the MVP, but the best quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. And easily, without a doubt, the best supporting cast in the NFL. You've got a top 3 receiver, arguably the best tight end. You've got a bunch of good running backs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to me, if you can keep them under 35 points, you give yourself the best chance. But, and I know that sounds really high, but again, you're talking about a Patrick Mahomes offense that is, they're guaranteed to score once every 2 or 3 possessions. So, if the Browns can find a way to bend and not break, force field goals, keep the ball out of his hands by running the football and running the clock down,
Yeah, you were mentioning this. This is going to be a high-power offense game, Logan, which leads me to some predictions. Overall thoughts for this Sunday. You were just explaining what the Browns can specifically do to win this game. Now, do you think they'll actually do it? Can the Browns knock off the Chiefs?
As a matter of whether they can or not, I believe they can. It is very possible, but I mean, with the money on the line, I can't say that I'm putting my money on Baker Mayfield. But hey, I'll tell you this much: if they win this week, I'm taking the Browns to the Super Bowl because I mean, if this team has that kind of energy to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, who says they can't go all the way to the end?
Exactly, right.
But if I was to give you a specific score, I'll take the Chiefs in a 42-28 win over the Cleveland Browns. I just don't think that the Browns secondary is going to be able to stop Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and the fact that Patrick Mahomes can throw the ball the length of the field in the air alone. So I'll take the Chiefs 42-28. But if the Browns were to win, I'm taking them to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's been a tremendous playoff. It was a great wild card weekend this past weekend, Logan. It's really been an amazing season if you're a football fan. Even despite all the COVID issues, it's still just been a pleasure to watch. And Logan, I want to talk to you real quick, a couple minutes here. Some other additional storylines. Let's go out of the Browns. Take the Browns out of the picture for a sec. Who's been your other team to watch so far in the playoffs? Lamar Jackson got his first playoff win last weekend against Tennessee in a comeback and a come-from-behind win. The LA Rams will be taking on Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers is looking to improve on his trophy case. And then Tampa Bay, it'll be, Tom Brady will be going up against Drew Brees. What's your top storyline in your mind of what's going on in the NFL playoffs aside from the Browns?
Well, if I had to pick one of those games that, it's got to be the top storyline, it's got to be the other AFC divisional game in the Bills and the Ravens. And, you look from, the point of view of the Ravens, for instance, right? You've got Lamar Jackson, this guy who appears to be hot, 48-yard touchdown last week. And I think that if the Ravens were to compete in this game, it would be something else because and believe it or not, a lot of people, Chiefs to the Super Bowl, if the Browns are going to lose, if the Chiefs win, they're gone. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
In my opinion, if I were to take anybody in the conference championship to win, it would be the Bills over the Chiefs. I just think, despite the fact that they have Kyrie Hill and Patrick Mahomes, this kid Josh Allen is electrifying.
Yeah.
And, you're talking about, in my belief, again, he has the number one receiver in the NFL playing right now. Earlier this season, I thought it was DeAndre Hopkins, but Stephon Diggs not only leads the league in receptions, but also yardage with over 1,500 yards.
Yeah.
And that is just unheard of.
Well,
you don't see that often. You see that from the greats.
Right.
And Stephon Diggs appears to be one of the greats. So you're putting a quarterback who, if I had a list right now, he's probably top 3 right now. He's just, to me, is that good. And, the only thing, in my opinion, that is in the Bills' way is the Chiefs and the fact that they can't run the football consistently. So, if I had to pick that storyline, I got to take the Bills. And if the Chiefs were able to take out the Browns in this Sunday's game, I'm going to take the Bills to the Super Bowl because I just don't believe that I can't see Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs losing in the conference championship.
I that's really the game I was looking at too, to be quite honest with you, Logan. I love seeing Lamar Jackson play. If I could name probably my favorite quarterback to watch in the NFL right now, I would say it's Lamar Jackson. Because his footwork, to me, Logan, is phenomenal. And I'm seeing, it looks like he's getting more involved in terms of throwing the football. He's got a solid team around him. From what it looked like, they had that big come-from-behind win. A lot of people were taking, the Titans over the Ravens. The Ravens were in hostile territory on the road. Do you think Lamar Jackson and the Ravens have a chance to upset this Bills team?
Well, when you think of the NFL, you can't ever, especially in the playoffs, minus the Bears and the Saints game, which I just think that was completely ridiculous that was even allowed. The Bears at an 8-8 clip and the Saints at a 12-4. The fact that they were even able to play, to me, is just insane. But next to that game, I can't say
Right.
When you think of a team that says there's no chance, you think of the Jets and the Chiefs, right? Not a chance the Jets win, right? But in the playoffs, I've learned there's never any calling any team out because, as the Browns have shown, if you run your mouth and you don't back it up, you're going to get your mouth run back on you.
Right.
I think that there's definitely a chance, and I don't think it would be an unbelievable upset like the Browns beating the Chiefs would be, but I would still be pretty shocked if the Ravens were able to walk away there out of Buffalo with a win.
Yeah, it'll be a great week of playoff football, Logan. Tomorrow, Saturday, the 16th of January, we have the Rams going up against Green Bay. That'll be live on Fox at 4:35 p.m. After that game from Lambeau Field, we'll head on over to Buffalo for that Ravens-Bills game. That'll be on NBC at 8:15 p.m. Then we have the big one, Cleveland fans, Browns and Kansas City Chiefs, 3:05 p.m. From Kansas City on CBS. It'll be live on CBS. And then our final match of the weekend will be the Battle of the Veterans, as Tampa Bay and Tom Brady will be going up against Drew Brees. So as I mentioned earlier in the show, happy birthday to him. And the New Orleans Saints. That'll be at 6:40 p.m. live on Fox. Logan, that concludes our podcast today for the Cleveland Sports Show. Once again, really appreciate you being on this week. It's awesome. I really appreciate all of your in-depth analysis and, bringing your perspectives to this podcast. It makes it that much better. I really appreciate all of your hard work and preparations, and I hope you enjoy the games this weekend in the NFL.
Yep, thank you. It's always great to join the show, and hey, go Browns, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Go Browns. Take care, Logan.
You too.
Thanks. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our this week's episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. You just heard my phone, you possibly just heard my phone go off. So Logan has has just left our episode, and that means our episode's over. So let's get into, if you loved that episode so much, you're probably thinking, Darius, I'm crying right now because you're saying the episode's over, and I want to listen to more Cleveland Sports Show content. Well, guess what? Don't cry. Wipe up those tears, because not only are the Browns in the playoffs, and you shouldn't be crying about that unless they're tears of joy, but you can also have tears of joy because all my work can be found on NordoniaHills.news. If you're on the NordoniaHills.news website, just go to the Contributors tab and look at my name. Search for my name. It should be about the third one down. It's Darius Sethna. It's spelled Darayus Sethna. Once you click on my name, from there you'll be able to see all of my work from NordoniaHills.news. I actually wrote an article recently about the Cavs and how they've been preparing for this upcoming NBA season. All my previous episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show are there as well. I'm also happy to announce that the Cleveland Sports Show has all my work is on Twitter. If you're interested in going on there on Twitter, make sure you type in my Twitter handle at Nordonia Sports. Once again, my name is spelled Darayus Sethna. I'm also happy to say that the Cleveland Sports Show is on Spotify. Make sure you type in my name, as I mentioned, spelled Darayus Sethna. Type that in the Spotify search bar, and you will have my podcast come up and ready and waiting for you to listen to. You can listen to it on Spotify on the go as well. So if you're going to Kansas City to see the game this weekend, or wherever you may be, make sure you tune into the Cleveland Sports Show. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darius Sethna of NordoniaHills.news signing off for now. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me this week for our latest installment of the Cleveland Sports Show. Go Browns, and I hope all of you fans have a wonderful, wonderful week. Ladies and gentlemen, from NordoniaHills.news, this is Darius Sethna signing off. Take care.